Now, next part of the lesson is essentially the opposite of squaring a line. Yeah, just exactly the opposite. And here's what it is. So here we have a square. How many little squares are there?
4.
Yes. Now, before we made this into the square, what was the original line before we squared it? What is the length of the line segment? What is the length of the line segment before we squared it?
2.
Yes, that's right. Yeah, that's the 1, 2. In here, you have a square number, which is 9. What is the original line before we squared it?
I don't know.
Okay, so the trick is this. Look, so here that's 9. The original line was 1, 2, 3.
Oh, right. Then how is the first one 2?
Oh, because look, the square is 4. Look, the original line was 2. 1, 2.
Okay.
It's not the mark, it's the space that we're watching.
Oh, okay, right.
Yes?
I get that.
In here are 16 little squares, which makes the 16 a square number. What was the original line before we squared it?
4?
Yeah.
Oh, right. Okay.
Okay, in here, there's only one square. 1 is a square number. What was the original line before you square it?
Wait, what one?
This one.
Oh, nothing.
Well, it's 1.
1. 1. It's gotta be 1.
Okay, we are going to go through a sequence now. 4 is a square number, as it's drawn here. What was the original line before we squared it?
2.
Great. Now we have 9 here, and the drawing here has 9 little squares within the big square. What was the original line before we squared it?
3.
Yes, now we're just going on and on. We have 16 here is a square number. The drawing is represented here with 16 little square. What was the original line before we squared it?
4.
Okay, now there is no drawing here. That is a square number, 25, but we don't have a space for drawing. What was the original line before? What's the length of the line before we squared it?
5.
Yes, now I'm going to make a jump.
Okay.
If I have a big square, and and within that big square are 100 little squares, what was the original line before you squared it?
10.
Yes.
I just got my homework.
Yeah, that's why it's good. The reason why we're having this conversation is because you've done your work. Okay. Now, here's another one. If I have a square, and within that square are 64 little squares, what was the original line before we squared it?
8.
Yes, exactly.
Ah, okay.
Okay, now let's go to the next one. If I have a big square, and within that big square are 144 little squares, what was the original line before it was squared?
What
was
12.
Yes. Good. Okay, here's another one. If I have a square and within that square are 49 little square, what was the original line before it was squared?
7.
Yes. Now, you ask me a question based on your homework. Okay, ask this question for me.
Is that 16?
Yeah, I have a big square and within it are 16 little square. Ask the question, go.
I have 16 squares.
Within a big square, right?
Within a big square.
What was See?
What was
What is the original length of the line before we squared it? Go.
what was the original length of the line before we squared it?
Well, the answer to that is 4. Okay, ask me another question.
Okay. What was the original length of the line if I had 49
Yes.
squares within a big square?
Yes, the answer to that is 7.
What is the original length of a line if I had 100 little squares within a square?
So I think now we improve in our asking in our task of asking the question. You have to say, what was the original length of the line before we squared it? Ask me another question. Go.
Okay. What was the original length of the line if we have 121 square
Within.
inside a square?
Yeah. So the answer to that is 11. 11.
Sure. Yeah.
Yes? Okay, that is really good. Now, the reason why I let you ask that question is because in maths, the question is they ask it in a very different way. Yeah? And that's caused confusion. But the one that you asked me and the one that I asked you in maths, they asked it differently. So the way they ask this in schools is this, right? Although we are a school. So they ask this, right? So the question that I asked you is, if I have 4 little squares within a big square, what was the original line before I squared it? So your answer is 2, right? But it's such a long way to ask a question. And for mathematicians, that's terrible. Terrible use of words, right? So they want to make it shorter. So the way they ask the question is this. They just say, what is the square root of 4?
Oh.
And the answer is, the square root of 4 is?
2.
Yeah, that's now I'm going to ask you, what is the square root of 9?
Oh.
Remember, we're doing the opposite. So the question that I asked you now is the same question as when I say, if I had 9 squares and what was the original line segment before I squared it? The answer is 3, right?
Yeah.
That is the same question when I ask you, the square root of 9 is 3. It's the same question.
Okay.
It's just phrased different. So ask me now, what is the square root of 4? Ask me.
What is the square root of 4?
So the square root of 4 is 2. It's the original line before we squared it.
Okay.
Okay, ask me this one here.
What is the square root? What is that?
What is the square root of?
Of 9.
So my answer to that is, the square root of 9 is 3.
Oh, 3. 3.
3, that's the original. Right?
Mm-hmm.
So the questions that you asked me earlier are the same question but phrased differently. Instead of asking, if I have 9 little squares within a big square, what was the original line before we squared it? You could also ask it as, what is the square root of 9?
Mm-hmm.
Yes?
Yeah.
Okay. What about this? I'm going to ask you.
What is that?
This one is, what is the square root of 16?
That's 4, isn't it?
The square root of 16 is?
The square root of 16 is 4.
Okay. And that's the same question as when I asked you, what is the length of the line when I have 16 little squares within a big square? What is the length before I squared it? Yes? Is this clear?
Yeah.
Okay, I'm going to ask you the same question. What is the square root of 25?
Square root of 25 is
What was the length of the line? So the question of what is square root of 25 is the same question when I asked you.
Oh, wait. I mean,
What were the
that's
original
5.
line? Say that again.
5.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. I got very confused there.
So
Yeah,
it's the
square
same question.
Yeah.
It's the same thing done differently.
Yeah.
Yes? Okay, let's go through here. I have 36 squares within a big square. Right? What is the square root of 36? What was the original line before we squared it? What is the square root of 36?
Square root of 36 is 6.
Yes. Great. Okay. What is the square root of 64?
Okay, is it 8?
Okay, check it. 8 times 8.
Yeah.
Yes. Very important, right? Okay, here's another one. What is the square root of 121?
Maybe 11?
Okay, check it.
Yeah.
Yes. Okay. Another one. What is the square root of 144?
Square root is 12.
Yes. So the way to answer that to me is the square root of 144 is 12.
Yeah.
So, do you have an idea?
Yeah.